It's good to be together. On this cold day, we can feel and sense the warmth that comes when we gather together as community and the warmth of Sondra's memory. We ask that as the service begins, that you take a moment now just to turn your cell phones off so that we can fully concentrate and focus on this important and sacred moment.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see.
This song, Amazing Grace, was a favorite of Sondra's, and it's an appropriate hymn to sing to begin our service, for it reflects a permanency in God's grace that can be found when we lift our eyes from the day-to-day toils of our lives. It reflects Sondra's hope, her idealism. It represents her ecumenical way and her acceptance. We turn now to another hymn of sorts, the 121st Psalm. It's a psalm that bids us to look up to the mountains. And Sondra was a source of uplift to her family and her friends, and her goodness will be a permanent marker in their lives, not unlike the lofty peaks of the highest heights.
Esaenai el heharim, me'ayin yavo Ezri, me'im Adonai oseh shamayim va'aretz.
I lift up my eyes to the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help will come from Adonai, maker of heaven and earth.
Al yitein lamot raglecha, al yanum shomerecha.
God will not allow your foot to slip. Your guardian will not slumber.
Hine lo yanum velo yishan shomer Yisrael Adonai shomrecha Adonai tzilcha על יד ימיnecha.
Behold, the guardian of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. The Eternal is your keeper. The Lord is your shade at your right hand.
יומם השמש לא יככה, וירח בלילה. אדוני ישמור מכל רע, ישמור את נפשך, ישמור את נפשך. אדוני ישמור צאתך ובואך, מעתה ועד עולם, מעתה ועד עולם.
The sun shall not harm you by day, nor the moon by night. Adonai will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and coming, now and forever. It's now a privilege to call upon dear grandson Jeff Berkson to step forward, as he has the honor of reading a beautiful poem by Mary Elizabeth Fry.
Do not stand at my grave and weep. I am not there. I do not sleep. I am 1,000 winds that blow. I am the diamond glints on snow. I am the sun on ripened grain. I am the gentle autumn rain. When you awaken in the morning's hush, I am the swift uplifting rush of quiet birds in circled flight. I am the soft stars that shine at night. Do not stand at my grave and cry, I am not there, I did not die.
We reflect now on the love of Sondra Winnik, for her love which united us in life and which death cannot sever, and for her companionship which we shared along life's path and which still continues through the tenderness of memory, and for the gifts of her heart and mind which brought us joy and happiness, and now have become a precious heritage of the Spirit. For all these and more, we are thankful. In this time of mourning, we listen to the voice of our sacred scripture that brings us the ever-new message of God's nearness. The 23rd Psalm.
Adonai roi lo echsa, bino sheyarbitzeni. Al mei menuchot, yinaleni. Nafshi yishovev, yancheini b'maglei tzedek, yancheini b'maglei tzedek, leman shemo. Gam ki elech begeit לא אירא, כי אתה עמדי, שבטך ומשענתך, המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפניי שולחן נגד צורריי, דשנת ושמן ראשי, כוסי רוויה. אך טוב וחסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. אדוני רואי לא אחסר, אדוני רואי לא אחסר.
It's now a great privilege to call upon Sondra's dear daughter, Judy, who will be followed by our grandson, Eric, to share stories of Sondra's life and the goodness that she brought to bear on the world.
Okay, thanks. Hi, everybody. My mother, Sondra Winnik, was an exceptional woman. She was born to Ida and Sam Himmelreich, immigrant parents. My grandma Ida from Latvia, my grandpa from Russia. My grandpa Sam had been in the Russian army and somehow escaped and was able to come to America. However, when going through Ellis Island, he became ill, but he hid his illness. Unfortunately, it was never treated, and he ended up being crippled for life. My grandpa Sam made his way through life shuffling with canes. Someone played matchmaker, and Ida and Sam were married in Milwaukee. My mom was the youngest of 3 girls, Molly, Celia, and Esther. Yes, my mom's real name was Esther Himmelreich. However, as she went through school and into high school, her name became a real problem. There was another Esther Himmelreich that grew up in her community, and that Esther Himmelreich kept getting in trouble. So my mom was sick and tired of explaining that she was the good Esther Himmelreich, and the other Esther Himmelreich was the bad Esther Himmelreich. Well, she had enough when she got into high school, and she decided to change her name to Sondra. So she became legally Sondra Ray Himmelreich. After graduation from Washington High School, she went to UWM for a while. She worked at Boston Store. She worked at Master Lock, doing some bookkeeping. She met my dad, who was at Marquette Medical School, And I have to tell you, I heard story upon story about how much my mother was educated to be a doctor as much as my father, helping him with medical school, that she probably could have passed the same boards that he had to pass. My mom never did finish college, but most of her life she was always seeking knowledge. Wherever she could, she was reading. In her later years, when she wasn't physically active, New York Times came every morning and she read it cover to cover along with the Milwaukee Journal. And then after lunch, she would read books. I rarely saw her watching TV. Everything was about reading. And up until she was 100, and after that, she was always reading. Her favorite day was Sunday because the New York Times, as you know, is this thick, and she would just spend the entire day reading every part of the New York Times. In the 1990s, she was seeking more knowledge because she was a docent at the Milwaukee Museum. She gave tours, like for example, when the King Tut exhibit was here, she educated herself on everything concerning King Tut, and then she was able to give her tours. And they had a huge butterfly exhibit at the museum. And my mother read and learned everything you could possibly know about butterflies. My mom loved her Jewish faith. In fact, in the 1980s, when her kids were grown, she decided finally to learn Hebrew. So did she go to Hebrew school? No, not my mom. My mom decided she's just going to teach herself Hebrew, and that's what she did, and she learned to read Hebrew. So she continued with her Jewish learning, and I have to say, what I know of the Jewish faith, she led her life totally by Jewish values. For example, she honored her mother and father and my dad's mother and father with the utmost kindness and respect. And obviously that had a great influence on me because now I spend all my free time with the elderly in the community. One of my favorite qualities that my mom possessed was her love of animals. And I can remember this back when we were living on Apple Tree Road in Glendale, and Nicolay High School wasn't built yet. It was just a big field back there, so there was always all kinds of animals roaming around. And one time, we found a nest full of bunnies with no mommy. And we waited and waited for the mommy bunny to come back, and it never did. So my mom went out and got the bunnies, and then she had my sister and I give up our baby bottles from our Tiny Tears dolls, and she fed them until they were strong enough to be let back out into the wild. So the other animals that she was nuts about and passed that on to many generations is her love of dogs. We all grew up loving dogs. We had 2 boxers, Chips, and then a few years later, we had a second boxer, Maggie. In fact, I want to tell you the Maggie story. I was about 9 years old. My brother Joel was away at Boy Scout camp, and my mother sat me down and said that she and my dad were going to be adopting a new baby girl. And I thought that was wonderful. I would finally have a little sister. So we went and picked up my brother at Boy Scout camp. And by the way, at the time, my dad must have been having his midlife crisis because he was driving a Corvette Stingray, okay? And the 4 of us, this is before seatbelt days, we all piled into this Corvette, and there were 3 of us go pick up Joel at Boy Scout camp, and then they said they were heading over. It was one of my dad's patients who wanted to give up this little girl. So we pulled up to this house, and my parents got out of the car, and Joel and I were in the car, and I'm looking through the window, and I said, Joel, it's true. I mean, look, there's a baby. My mom is holding a little baby in a blanket. And we just thought, oh my God, we're going to have a little sister. And then here they come out to the car, and here is this little 6-week-old boxer puppy. And we were just nuts for her. So my mom, it was typical of my mom because, yes, we were really adopting another little baby girl. Another one of my favorite doggy stories is, any of you remember the Today Show when Dave Garroway was the host? He often had, and my mom always had the Today Show on. I can remember eating breakfast before I went to school and to the Dave Garroway show, or the Today Show was on starring Dave Garroway. And he would often have animal tricks on there. And there was a dog on there that could say mama. And so, you know, this wasn't like TikTok or Instagram, okay? This was live TV, and this person could teach their dog to say mama. So my mom decided that Maggie was going to learn how to say mama. And so she worked with our boxer, and if you know anything about boxers, they drool a lot. And my mom got her, would hold up a little treat, and she would say mama, and then you could hear, mama, mama. And she did it to perfection. Why? Because my mother wouldn't give her the treat until she said it perfectly. And as my cousin pointed out to me the other day, my mom would wait until Maggie would say it perfectly to the point where there was a puddle on the floor in the kitchen from all the drool. My mom made dogs so much of a part of her life that if you go into her house now, you're going to see as many photos of her dogs and dog grandchildren and great-grandchildren that she has of pictures of her family. My mother loved music, especially classical. She grew up learning to play the violin, and she was quite good. In fact, she played in the Jewish community orchestra in the 1940s. She sat next to another violinist, which she told me a long time ago, but it didn't mean anything to me. She sat next to a woman named Helen Bader. And then you never know where life is going to lead you, because Helen Bader's philanthropic organization is now one of my main supporters of L'chaim Havarut Clubhouse North Shore, my senior organization. My mom had so many skills. She knit so many beautiful Afghans, so many beautiful baby blankets for her grandchildren. And for me in the 80s, remember when we had those shoulder pads on everything in the 80s? Well, my mother hand knit these sweaters that had the shoulder pads, and I was living in Chicago at the time, and let me tell you, people were trying to rip them off of me. Who made these beautiful sweaters? I was just the cat's meow. But my favorite memory about my mom's gift of knitting and sewing takes me back to when I was in 3rd grade at Milwaukee Downer Seminary, and our school was having a Halloween costume contest. So my mother went to design and sew something that she knew I would love, and I did. And she made me the most beautiful yellow tulle fairy princess outfit that you could ever imagine. Layers and layers of tulle, a satin top with a sweetheart neckline, and she had glitter all up and down it. And my dream had come true. I was finally a fairy princess, and I just couldn't wait to take it to school. However, she put it in a big wardrobe thing that I had to carry to school. And when I realized I had to get on the bus with it, I didn't want to take it, because when you got on the bus, the upperclassmen were on the bus too, and they would make fun of me having to carry this great big thing. So I cried and said that I'm just not taking it. I don't care. I'm not going to have those big kids make fun of me. So I left, and I went to school without my fairy princess dress, and I was very sad. And all of a sudden, I looked up from my desk, and there was my mom standing there. She drove my fairy princess dress down to school. And yes, you predicted it, I won for best costume in the whole lower school of Milwaukee Downer Seminary. What's nice is I've kept that dress all this time, and now it's in the hands of Emily Berkson, who lives in Utah, and hopefully she will pass it on to maybe the next generation, Emily being her one of her great-granddaughters. All during these years of raising 4 children, she was excelling. She was also doing more than that. She was running my dad's medical practice. My mom did it all. Oh, and sometime in the 60s, she decided she was going to get a real estate license. So she went and did that. She never used it, and I don't know why she did it, but I just assume, knowing her thirst for knowledge, she probably just wanted to learn about real estate. As I talk about her now, I'm just exhausted even thinking about everything that she used to do. And during all the years of raising her children and being a loving wife to my father, she always took great care of herself. She always looked fabulous. I do really think that she lived for 100 years because of taking care of herself. She loved food and loved to cook, but she never overate. I can count on one hand how many drinks, alcoholic drinks, she probably had in her life, and she had the inane ability, now listen to this carefully, to only eat one cookie if a platter was put in front of her. And even more so, her favorite thing, which were chocolate-covered cherries, she had the ability to just eat one piece of candy. And Angie, her wonderful caretaker who's with us today, she can attest to that because she just couldn't believe. My mother loved her sweets. She had a great amount of self-discipline in all aspects of her life, eating included, something I did not inherit from her. And she walked and exercised and always followed her doctor's orders. I mean, how many elderly people do you know actually drink the amount of water that their doctor tells them to drink? Well, my mom did. And I really think that the way she took care of herself, of course it's genetic, but I really feel it had to do with her living for so many years. I was most proud of my mom's many friendships that were so long and lasting. At a very young age, I knew exactly who she was referring to when she said the 48th Street group. I like to say these names out loud because it gives me a warm and fuzzy feeling. The 48th Street group were 4 families that all lived on 48th Street on the west side and had their kids, and they socialized together and shared many things together. And I'm talking about Mickey Tillman, Gertrude Levin, Ethel Gill, and Sarah Plotkin. Our families were like one giant family. My mom would be so pleased to know that Eileen Dubner, Ethel Gill's daughter, is here, and Debbie Gallen, Gertrude's daughter, is here. And it's just, I feel good about it, and it's kind of closing a chapter, but all those memories will continue for many years to come. And then there's my mother's bridge group. Many have gone to that big bridge table in the sky, but her most current, and current when I say they've been playing for at least 25 years, it's more years than that, but I don't recall what it is. They have been so supportive. They were like the best card-playing friends you could ever imagine, and I'm talking about Sue Krasnow, Donna Berg, Millie Shapiro. They were all always there for my mother, and my mother loved you all. She was very appreciative of what wonderful friends you were to her, even when you weren't playing bridge. My mom had other special friends, like our neighbor Sandy Nankin, and her renewed friendship with Glenna Shutkin, and my mom's biggest fan, June Curzon. Okay, she was always one of my mom's favorites to chit-chat with. And another friend of hers, Seema Goran, who my mom, I know, enjoyed her entire family. These are just some of the special people that my mom greatly, greatly appreciated. Although, you know, I have to say my mom was kind of a bore, okay? She would never gossip. She'd come home from playing cards, or I'd talk to her on the phone when I was living in other cities, and I'd say, "Hey, Mom, you got any juicy gossip about the people in Milwaukee?" And she would always say, "No, nothing today." So she was a true friend to all these people that I mentioned, and because she could keep confidential matters confidential. She was a trustworthy friend to all. My mom had the ability that I wish I could inherit, that she always looked at the good in people. And that's why I think her friendships lasted as long as a lifetime. She just never could see the bad in anyone. And I have to say, now I am her daughter, so I may not be objective about this, but I am unaware of anyone that ever had anything bad to say about Sondra Winnik. I do want to recall two more special friendships my mother had. The two Sylvias, Sylvia Pastor and Sylvia Grossman. Both women were rocks for my mom, and I think vice versa. My mother was an avid traveler, especially after my dad passed away in 1978. My mom and Sylvia Pastor actually went to Senegal and other parts of Africa. They came back telling all kinds of stories how they would stay up all night killing bugs. Ugh. Sylvia Grossman and my mom were friends since high school. They traveled on multiple trips, including India, where I have a picture of them sitting on a elephant riding. And I think my mom was, well into her 60s by then. Photos of trips down the Amazon, pyramids in Egypt, and sightseeing in London, Russia, and the Netherlands, and many, many trips. I know we counted my mom travels years ago, and I think it was about 80 different countries. She not only took care of herself physically, but mentally, and stressed the importance of looking out for oneself. To be independent, literally, and be aware that no one is going to care for you better than yourself. Life can be very hard. And that proved to be true. My mother cherished her family. My brother Mitchell and his wife, Jan, my sister Beth and her husband Michael, my brother Joel and his wife Barbara. But my mom was right. Life can be very difficult, especially when there is unexpected loss. Her husband died at 60 years old. Both my sister Beth and my brother Joel passed away from cancer when they were both in the prime of their lives. In 2019, another unexpected loss of my mom's 44-year-old grandson Adam from a freak heart problem. The pain was so deep for his wife Daniela and his two boys that my mom was just there to comfort them, even though her heart was broken also. How does a mother endure that pain? And my mom always said, there's nothing you can do about it. So she endured that pain until she passed away. So hopefully now she has some peace. She would tell me that life keeps going. There are ups and downs. At 80 years old, my mom got another chance at love. She met Newt Pekarsky, and they had 12 magical years together. I have to say she hit the jackpot, because my dad was this short, bald-headed little guy who had a great sense of humor. But when I met Newt, he was tall, white, wavy hair, and tan, and he was the sweetest man you could ever imagine. And his granddaughter Jill is here today, because my mom loved all of Newt's family the way she loved her own. She would tell me that, as I said, that life keeps going. And it does. My brother-in-law, Michael, he found love too after my sister passed. He married Carrie, and my mom loved her, and she loved her son, John, like they were always part of the family. I do want to express that my mom's love for her 6 grandchildren and 13 great-grandchildren was her biggest joy in life. I have always said that in my next life, I want to come back as one of my mother's grandchildren. If you told me when I was 25 years old that I was going to come back to Milwaukee and live with my mother, I would have told you were crazy, but that's what happened. I lived with my mom for 9 years, and it was a gift. Now, I have the gift of memories with my mom. It was an honor to be her youngest daughter because, as I said, Sondra Winnik was an exceptional woman.
My name is Eric Berkson, and I am Grandma Sondra's eldest grandchild. As I wrote these words, I wanted to tell the perfect story that encompassed all of who Grandma was, that encapsulated the meaning that she provided to our family. And as I thought of the many times with Grandma, I realized that Grandma was more of a feeling than just a story. When I think of Grandma, I think of her thin pancakes, her spinach borscht, her amazing cookies. At the same time, I also reflect on the true brilliance of how she organized and cooked thin pancakes for my 3 hungry brothers and I. And I truly treasure the time I had to spend with my grandma and appreciate all that she taught me during that time. Grandma was that and so much more. She was the grandma that had time to scratch our back with a special touch that made us feel so comfortable and loved. She was the grandma that pursed her lips just so to drink her coffee when reading the morning paper. She was the grandma that could meaningfully talk about anything and offer a pragmatic realism of life when asked directly. She was a world traveler, and as a docent at the Milwaukee Museum, she took pride in us coming to visit so she could teach us something. Because Grandma was so special to me and my family, instead of telling that singular story, I want to take a minute to be thankful. I am thankful for a grandmother who was a strong and smart woman, who read the New York Times daily, even right before her last trip to the hospital. I am thankful for the grandma that informed me that the surgical dissection set sitting in the back of her closet next to Donald Winnick's microscope was not my grandpa's, but rather her own from her own biology classes. I am thankful for a grandmother who was the true matriarch of our family, defining who we are as a family and what we should value. I know she took pride in all of our family's successes. I am truly thankful for a grandmother who influenced my mom to make her who she was. I see my mom in Grandma Sondra, and I see Grandma Sondra in Uncle Mitchell, in Auntie Judy, in Uncle Joel, and certainly in my own children. I am thankful that Grandma got to meet 13 of her great-grandchildren, including my 2 kids, Jaden and Brennan. I take pride in passing down Grandma's family values to them. I also look very much forward to teaching them how to make thin pancakes. I'm thankful for Grandma's 100th birthday celebration, that we could spend the whole week as a family together, and that Grandma was her strong self throughout. I'm thankful for Auntie Judy, who changed her life to make sure that my grandma had the best at the end of hers. And I'm thankful to Angie and to Grandma's other caretakers who kept Grandma safe for so long. I'm thankful for Newt for giving so much joy back to Grandma, and to my grandpa Donald Winnick, who I'm sure helped to find Grandma herself. I'm thankful that my grandmother could live 100 years and be there for so much of our family's experiences. And finally, I'm thankful that we can all be here together, celebrating the life of a truly extraordinary woman. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy, and thank you, Eric, for such beautiful reminiscences of such an extraordinary woman. It's meaningful that Sondra passed on the 7th night of Hanukkah. And during the festival of Hanukkah, we gather around the Chanukiah and light the candles one by one, each night increasing in number and increasing in light. But it all starts with the shamash, the helper candle, the candle that creates the spark of light and kindles the other. It's a special candle because it helps make the other candles brighter. It gives of its flame. The shamash is the source of light that can beat back the darkness. And in the Winnik family and in our community, Sondra Winnik was a shamash, for she bestowed the flame of her being and kindled the brightness of love in her family. She brought light and warmth to her friends, and with her life and the memory of the brightness of her being, she will forever beat back the gloom and darkness. And so those who have had Sondra's light shine upon us have gathered together this afternoon in remembrance to bid shalom to a loving wife, a caring mother, a beloved grandmother, a great-grandmother, a sister, a dear aunt, a special friend to so many, a woman whose journey of life will shine on in the hearts of those she touched. And we've come together today also to bring comfort to those who feel this loss so deeply, to Sondra's family. We offer our consolation to Sondra's dear children and those who she took into her heart as her children. We think of Mitchell and Jan. We think of Beth of blessed memory and Michael and Carrie. We think of Joel of blessed memory and Barbara, and we think of Judy. And so too do we think of the grandchildren and great-grandchildren that brought renewed light and life to Sondra's world. We think of Eric and Stephanie, Jaden and Brennan, Adam of blessed memory, and Daniela, Max and Leo, Josh and Stephanie, Ben and Dina, Jeff and Kathleen, Kyle, Emily and Aaron, Rachel and Will, Juliana, Simon and Tali, Ariel and Gerald and Asher, and we think of John. 34 names. 34 names of those who look to Sondra as mother and as grandmother and as great-grandmother. That is a great amount of light to have been kindled by this extraordinary woman. She had a tremendous impact on each of you throughout your lives. She raised you and cared for you. She taught you and guided you. She loved each of you in her own special way. And you all shared with me how devoted she was to all of her children. She was eternally there for you. At an early age, she was a leader in the Boy Scouts and Eagle Scouts and Girl Scouts and the Brownies. She cultivated and supported your interests. She supported her children even when they may have been challenging. And Sondra instilled many lessons in her children and the generations that follow: to approach life with a sense of humor, to be able to laugh at oneself. Sondra showed empathy and kindness. She taught you to respect your elders and to adore the young. She was kind to animals and loved babies and had a unique and thoughtful way of talking with children. And Sondra taught you to live your life with passions and intellectual curiosity and to always be self-reliant. She did everything right. She took care of her husband, her children, her grandchildren, and she took care of herself. And there's so much of your mother in you as well. You have her kindness, her empathy, her respect, her love of animals, and her accepting ways. As a grandmother, she was a warm and thoughtful presence. Grandma Sondra would greet her grandchildren, having baked all kinds of cookies, at least 6 different kinds. And whether grandkids lived far away or close by, she was always there for you. She traveled to see grandkids several times a year, and Sondra was always positive and very present. She kept tabs on all of her grandkids and would ask them questions that were introspective and would get to the root of how they were doing. She would pose questions and comments that touched on the big matters of life. The well-being of her grandkids is what mattered the most to her. And there are stories of travels together, strategizing as to how to get your parents to buy that dog you wanted. There was the knowledge that she was extraordinarily proud of all of you. And all the memories and experiences you had with your mother and grandmother and great-grandmother and all the lessons she taught you, they're incorporated into your very being. And it's through you that the light of Sondra's life will continue. And now you represent her greatest legacy on this earth, as you will share the stories of her life with the next generation, and you'll guarantee that she will live on. And though nothing can replace Sondra in the lives of her loved ones, the presence of so many of you here today is a sign of the love and respect you have for her, as well as those who are watching over Zoom, because we can feel your presence as well. And I'm certain it brings her family comfort. It's a loving testimony of the place in which you held her and the family in your hearts, and the meaning of all your lives had intertwined with hers. Sondra lived a full and vibrant 100 years. It was a long life filled with meaning and light. When we think of 100 years, how can we not think of the thread of the relationships that are interwoven, like the fabric that her father would have in his shop, or like Sondra would bind together to create beautiful works of art for her children and grandchildren. Sondra was held 6 generations of her family. And even as recently as this past week, she had the opportunity to smile and be in the presence of her youngest great-grandchild, Tali. When Sondra was 21, she married Donald of blessed memory. Shortly after the wedding and after the birth of their first child, Donald served as a naval officer, as a lieutenant and a medic in the Navy. And while Donald was away at war, Sondra moved above her father's tailor shop to continue to raise her son with the help of family. And when Donald returned, he attended medical school, and Sondra was a wonderful companion and help to him, tutoring him in preparation for his courses. And even into her later years, Sondra had an amazing command of physiology. It was Sondra that ran the medical practice, running the office. And Sondra could diagnose someone just as well as Donald. Sondra and Donald would entertain in their homes with dinner parties for friends, and there was a fineness and refinement about the two of them. Their external fineness, the way they dressed and carried themselves, was matched by the inner fineness of their being. And as you've heard, Sondra was an extraordinary cook, much like her mother was, preparing wonderful meals of Eastern European cuisine, meals like brisket and kreplach and blintzes and Spanish borscht that are treasured recipes in her dear family. And the two lived a life of togetherness and love until Donald's passing at the age of 60. But Sondra never stopped living her life with vibrancy. And it's a tribute to Donald that Sondra was willing to try love again, and she found meaning and love in Newt Pekarsky of blessed memory. And theirs was a beautiful romance that began in their 80s, and they spent 12 years together until Newt's passing. It's a reminder that our ability to love can always abide. Sondra's life was not without tragedy. The loss of 2 men that she loved, 2 children, and a grandchild are unthinkable. But Sondra was resilient and never grew bitter. She persevered. 100 years of life is hard to comprehend. It's filled with events and memories and love, moments that are both bitter and sweet. Sondra never stopped living her life with tenacity. She was strong and resilient, and she lived every day of her life. All of you here today will feel the void Sondra's passing leaves in your lives. You'll miss the back scratches and her wonderful laugh. You'll miss her big smile and the way she made you feel loved and appreciated, but she will never truly be gone. Sondra will live on in the unique memories that you have of her and in the stories of her life that you'll continue to share. Like the sun behind the clouds, she may not be viewed by human eyes, but her presence will always be there, felt shining through, casting light with the same love and affection as she did in life. For Sondra is a shamus, a light that burned brightly in her community, that gave hope to her family, that instilled faith in her friends. She lived her life, bringing light and wisdom to all who knew and loved her. And the best and most noble aspects of her life will forever burn brightly in the hearts of her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren for generations to come. Yehi zichrona livracha. May the name and memory of Sondra Winnik therefore abide among us as an eternal blessing. And may the source of peace and comfort to all who mourn among us. And let us say, Amen. Adonai natan v'Adonai lekach yehi shem Adonai mevorach. God has given, God has taken away. Blessed be the name of God. Please take a moment of silence as we remember Sondra. May the memory of Sondra Winnik endure among us as a blessing. In your own time, O God, when we too are called to enter eternity, may we leave this life secure in the faith that in your light we shall see light. In life and in death we cannot go where you are not, and where you are, hope endures. Sustained by this assurance, we invoke your name, Almighty God. Please rise now for El Malay Rachamim.
Ametzei menucha nechona tachat kanfei hashechina im kedoshim utehorim kezohar harakia mazhirim et nishmat Esther bat Shmuel v'Chana shehalecha le'olama Ba'al harachamim yastireha בסתר כנפיו לעולמים ויצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה אדוני הוא נחלתה ותנוח בשלום על משכבה ונאמר Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Sondra Winnik, who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. You may be seated. It's now a great privilege to call upon Barbara Winnik to share a beautiful poem and her thoughts.
My mother-in-law, as you've heard so much today, was a strong person, even lasting longer in the last few weeks than anyone could have foreseen. I respected her. I loved her. She was an inspiration for both me and my daughters, Rachel and Ariel. Throughout the years, she taught me many things by example. She was nice to all, never bitter, never envious of others. When I might complain to her about something or someone, she empathized with, "New Barbara, what can you do?" We all know that she had a lot in life to be sad about. She took the losses of her children, Mary Beth and Joel, my husband, and her grandson Adam with a strength and dignity that not many could have. She was so proud of her children and grandchildren's accomplishments, and she should have been. She loved all of her grandchildren and 13 great-grandchildren. Sadly, the pandemic began, and she never had a chance to meet Asher from London, Ariel's son, my grandson, who I know she would have adored. However, my daughter Rachel just wanted her newborn Talia to have some sort of meeting with her, and we flew in. Strange things happened. While she was not conscious to anything else, she woke up to meet, smile, and talk to her new great-grandchild. It was an amazing and memorable event for all of us. It was a long life, probably longer than she wanted, because of her losses. But again, she lived with dignity, and we are all fortunate to have had her in our lives. Go with grace, Mom. I hope you have peace now and are surrounded by all your loved ones. Here's a poem that she liked. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey. From childhood to maturity, and youth to age. From innocence to awareness, and ignorance to knowing. From foolishness to discretion, and then perhaps to wisdom. From weakness to strength, or strength to weakness, and often back again. From health to sickness, and back again, we pray to health again. From offense to forgiveness, from loneliness to love, from joy to gratitude, from pain to compassion, and grief to understanding, from fear to faith, from defeat to defeat to defeat, until looking backward or ahead, we see that victory lies, not at some high place along the way, but having made the journey, stage by stage, a sacred pilgrimage. Birth is a beginning, and death a destination, and life is a journey, a sacred pilgrimage to life everlasting. Thank you.
Thank you, Barbara, for those beautiful words and that extraordinary poem. It speaks to the nature of life. It's appropriate that we should turn now from this poem by Alvin Fine to the Kaddish Yatom, to the mourner's Kaddish, as nowhere in this prayer is there a mention of death. Only magnified and sanctified are we. Magnified and sanctified is God for bringing such extraordinary people into our lives. We rise now together as we recite these sacred words of Kaddish Yatom, the mourner's Kaddish. Yit gadal v'yit kadash be'raba, be'alma divrach chirutei v'amlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uv'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam ulamei almaya. Yit barach v'ishtabach v'it ba'ar v'it ramam v'it naseh. V'itadar, v'italev, v'italal, shmei dekudesha b'richu, la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru, amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort to all who are bereaved. And let us say, amen. The stories that we tell about our loved ones are the ways in which we keep their memories alive. In just a moment, we will begin the meal of consolation, which is in Clearfield Hall. The most important thing that we can say to one another in moments of grief and sadness, particularly to Sondra's dear family, is let's talk about stories of our loved one. That is how we draw sustenance, not only from each other, but from our loved one's memory. I'm going to invite Sondra's dear family to leave the sanctuary first. And as they do, as they pass through the community of friends that stands together, I invite you all to say words of consolation to them. And so we are going to conclude our ceremony with these sacred words. And I'll invite now Sondra's dear family to leave through the center of the sanctuary as you will begin your meal of consolation in Clearfield Hall. Let all who are gathered here repeat these words after me, speaking them to all who mourn, in the Hebrew and then the English. Hamakom, Yinachem, Etchem, Betoch, Sha'ar, Avele, Tzion, Jerusalem. And now in the English, may God console you, among the mourners, of Zion and Jerusalem. Now go forth in peace to life. This concludes our ceremony.
Oh, yeah, so did I. Hebrews like all those years. But that's why I can read